This is the cool I see. We're going to answer the question of why was Jesus crucified. When you go to the book of St. Matthew's, at the end of the crucifixion and the resurrection, you have Matthew 28, which is known as the Great Commission, of which Jesus tells his followers, "Go ye therefore, baptizing all nations in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Yahweh, 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 teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you." Now, there Jesus tells his followers the right thing. It's about God, the Father. Now, when you go back, you find that Jesus misuses the name of Christ. When you go to the book of Matthew, chapter 24, Jesus tells you about many false messiahs and many false Christs. When you go to the book of Matthew chapter 23, in Matthew chapter 23 in the 10th verse, Jesus tells you, "And don't let anyone call you teacher, for you have one teacher, the Christ." That's a lie. The Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit is my teacher. I am Christ, Yahweh, Yahweh, the Holy Son of God. The Holy Spirit is my teacher, so you guys have more than one teacher. You have two teachers. I'm the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit is my teacher. So Jesus lied to you in the name of Christ. In the book of Matthew, chapter 22, in the verse 42, Jesus asked his own disciples, "What do you think about Christ, the Messiah? Whose son is he?" You see, this is a question that should not have been posed, because Jesus was telling you about both the Son of Man. I don't know which man that he was the son of, but I do, but I don't. And the Son of God, myself, though. Yahweh, Yahweh. So there's a confusion about the Son of Man and the Son of God. And so Jesus himself asks his own disciples, what do they think about Christ? I don't know why Jesus was lying to his disciples at this time. But the Holy Spirit does know. Now, very quickly, in the book of Matthew, chapter 12, in the 48th verse, Jesus tells his disciples, they say, "Your mother and your brother are outside waiting for you." And Jesus says, "Who is my mother and my brother? Whoever obeys and does the will of my Father in heaven is my mother and my brother and my sisters." So therefore, Jesus is telling you guys about my Father again, Yahweh, Yahweh. Now, very, very quickly, in the book of Matthew, chapter 22, Jesus tells his people contradicting things. First, in Matthew chapter 22, in the 32nd verse, Jesus tells his followers, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." This is from Exodus chapter 3, where Moses is told the name of God himself. And Jesus tells you about my Father, Yahweh, God. Now, later on, in Matthew chapter 22 is where he asks his disciples, "So what do you think about Christ? Whose son is he?" Maybe he was trying to trick his own followers. I don't know about that. I wasn't there like that physically with him. When you go back from Matthew chapter 22, after he tells you about my Father, in another place it tells you about my Father. He tells you in the book of Matthew chapter 8, at the beginning of his ministry. He tells you at the end and at the beginning of my ministry. In the book of Matthew chapter 8, in the 11th verse, Jesus tells you, his followers, "And I tell you this, that many Gentiles will come from all over the world and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the feast in the kingdom of heaven." So at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he tells you about my Father, Yahweh. And at the end of Jesus' ministry, he tells you about my Father, Yahweh. And in the middle of his ministry, he tells you about my Father, Yahweh. In Matthew chapter 8, in Matthew chapter 22, before he was crucified, and in Matthew chapter 28, after the resurrection. So you Christians are a little bit confused about which name to worship. Jesus told you in the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Yahweh, Yahweh." So you Christians are confused because you search the scriptures, but you don't know. And so I had to remind you. See? Now, in the book of Matthew chapter 10, verse 32, Jesus tells you, his own followers, something very simple. In the book of Matthew chapter 10, verse 32, it tells you, anyone who welcomes you is welcoming me. And anyone who is welcoming me is welcoming the Father who sent me. Excuse me, that's Matthew chapter 10, verse 40. When you go to Matthew chapter 10, verse 32, my eyes are not what they used to be. He tells you, if anyone acknowledges me publicly on earth, I will openly acknowledge that person before my Father in heaven. But if anyone denies me here on the earth, I will deny that person before my Father in heaven. Now, two things come with me. I was born in the city of Bethlehem still 40 years ago, where the Bible tells you Christ will be born in the city of David. That was me. Donald Trump came and stole me 40 years ago. I told you guys this already. And so Jesus asks you, whose son is he? Donald Trump only put his name on my birth certificate after he stole me to try to save himself, because he died and was raised up with Christ. Used to be Jesus, died. You see? And right here in Matthew chapter 10 in the 32nd verse, it tells you, if anyone acknowledges me publicly, I will acknowledge you. Donald Trump told you on April 1st of 2018 that Christ is risen. Don't know, I've been living for so long, don't know why he would say something like that. It gives you an April Fool's message or something. I've already been here. And he's well aware of that as well. He's just, scared to be around me for whatever reasons. That's how the devil is, But if anyone acknowledges me, I would acknowledge them. But if you deny me, I'm going to deny you also. These are the words of Jesus. And Donald Trump was paid to be Jesus and died under that name. Why was Jesus crucified? Jesus crucified because he lied about Christ. I've told you the truth.